The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make a lot of noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghosts. It's scaring them.
Alright, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Okay! Game on!
Game on!
Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat on my way. We're at the entrance. Prepare for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride on this Tuesday, September 12th. Wednesday, September 13th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia as we are here for you 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on our terrestrial stations. WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Then rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. If you're on social media, so are we. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, S.O.R. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn and download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, because we don't take callers, so you need to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become a member of the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. You'd look good in a t-shirt. We also have the Encounter Online dealing with everything in paranormal, courtesy of our editors Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. Check out my latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an S.O.R. Sightlines report. We also have great video viewing from Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. Today is another special day in the history of ufology and the strange. It was 65 years ago today the Flatwoods Monster was first reported, and to this day it is one of the greatest stories in West Virginia folklore. A quick synopsis of what happened. On September 12, 1952, two brothers, Edward and Fred May, and their friend Tommy Heyer witnessed a bright object cross the sky, coming to rest on land belonging to a local farmer. Joined by others upon their return to the site, the group reached the top of the hill where they reportedly saw a large pulsating ball of fire about 50 feet to their right. They also detected a pungent mist that made their eyes and noses burn. One of the group then noticed two small lights off to the left of the object underneath a nearby oak tree and directed his flashlight towards it, revealing this creature, which started bounding towards them. Legendary ufologist Stanton Friedman is here to tell us the rest of the story. A nuclear physicist by trade, I like to call him the Wayne Gretzky of ufology. Mr. Friedman became interested in UFOs in 1958 and since 1967 has lectured frequently about them at more than 600 colleges, 100 professional groups all across North America and in 18 other countries. He has also published more than 90 UFO papers and books, including this story with Frank Ficino on the Flatwoods Monster. Stanton Friedman, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Great to have you here. How are you, my friend?
Well, it's a ridiculous hour to be on the radio if you're on the East Coast. I'm east of the East Coast, in the Atlantic time zone. And when I say that, people look at me, what do you mean Atlantic time zone? I'm east of Maine. Well, there's nothing east of Maine, I've had people tell me.
Well,
yes, there is.
Well,
New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, we're here.
At least you're not in Newfoundland, because then you would have to add another half an hour.
Yeah, I tell people that, and they look at me like I'm nuts, but... That's all right. No, I've lived here now in Fredericton, New Brunswick, capital city of the Picture Province, since 1980. And we moved here from California. Doesn't everybody do that? I don't think so. But I've never regretted the move. Great place to raise a family. It gets a little rugged in the winter, but, that's okay. Look, I grew up in New Jersey, and the hot and humid summers are something to behold that I'm very happy not to have to worry about. So I'm well. I'm old, but not fully decrepit yet. And I have to make one change in what you said. I've now spoken, last year I added Bulgaria to the list of countries. So it's 19 countries, 50 states, and 10 provinces. Got a few more to go, but what the heck. And, when I think of how much I grew up on radio, living in New Jersey with all those New York stations and everything. And, so I'm comfortable with radio. I like the idea. And one of the big disappointments in my life when I was young, my mother took us into New York City, 18 miles away, and we're at a radio station there to watch a radio show. And those guys don't look anything at all like I thought they looked. I had a picture in my mind, radio with television without pictures, And there's a sound effects guy and stuff like that. What a disappointment. But I've gotten used to that the world of the imagination can be just as powerful as the real world. And for some people, it's probably more powerful. But, it's been an education. Not only have I seen the world, I haven't been everywhere, only 19 countries, so I still got a few more to go. But I've had a chance to meet people and to realize how interested they are in the UFO phenomena. All over the place. And not everybody is well educated about UFOs, understandably, because there is a stigma associated with UFOs. I'll tell you a little experiment that I have done many times. At the end of my lecture, which can usually be flying saucers are real, or a new view of the cosmos, or star travel, yes. At the end of many of my lectures, I've asked the audience, I say, look, how many people here, this is after they've heard my lecture now, I don't have guts enough to do it before, how many people here believe they've seen what I would consider to be a flying saucer, having defined my terms in the course of the lecture? Just raise your hand, and I'll point and count, because that way they get a sense of it. Since I'm on the stage, I can see the whole audience, and I've had audiences bigger than 2,000. And typically, 10% of the audience, much to their surprise, claim to have seen a flying saucer. But then I ask, how many of you reported what you saw? 90% of the hands go down. When people come up to me at my table, they want me to sign one of my books and stuff like that, and they tell me, they got to tell me their story, but did you report it? No. Why not? They think I was some kind of a nut, is the most frequent answer. Well, there aren't many people laughing at me or at the sighting people. Times have changed, and I'm very glad. And I think, and I did get asked in Manitoba, as a matter of fact. We had a full house, big audience, in a big, real auditorium, sloping aisles and stuff. The first question was, how about asking this audience how they feel about flying saucers? I had presented some Gallup poll data. And I said, well, normally I don't ask my audience to stick their necks out. That's my job. Well, I don't think anybody would mind. He said everybody clapped, so I did. I asked two questions. How many believe some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft? And the second question was, how many believe no UFOs are somebody's spacecraft? Well over 90% said they think some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Now, this is after a lecture by me, presenting tons of data and stuff and trying to deal with the false claims of the nasty, noisy negativists. But so people think you must get a hard time. Because I come on very strong. Several important conclusions. One, the evidence is overwhelming that planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. In other words, some, underlined 27 times, some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Two, the subject of flying saucers represents a kind of cosmic Watergate, meaning governments have lied about it. No question about it. Three, there's no question that it's one of the biggest stories of the millennium. Now, I don't say 2 millennia, because then I get some religious people will give me a hard time. So I've been out there, I've asked the questions, I don't worry about going out in front of an audience and giving those conclusions. They're easy to defend. Facts, I'm a fact man. I'm a nuclear physicist. I worked on more canceled government-sponsored research and development programs than anybody. But it's been fun, it's been exciting and stimulating. And one thing that's happened, and I'm glad that I'm still alive to see it, is that our view of the cosmos has changed. We used to think, well, we've got the only solar system, don't we? And we're the only planet in this unique solar system that's got water all over the place, that's got air that we can breathe. We're kind of at the peak of God's great creation, or some words like that. And I don't get anybody making that, jumping to that conclusion anymore. We now know that there are planets all over the place. The latest numbers that I've checked say between 1 and 1.6 planets per star. So within a mere 100 light years of here, there are 10,000 stars. That means within just 100 light years, the galaxy is thousands of light years across, and Andromeda is 2 million light years away. But that means between 10,000 and 16,000 planets within 100 light years. So I'm not saying they all have life. Some of them probably have done a little colonizing, because people think, well, our situation is typical. The next star over from the sun is 4.3 light years away, so it's quite a ways to go. No, there are plenty of stars that have other stars within less than a light year, which changes the situation, in other words. It's not such a big deal. And we've got time. Back in the 1600s, Bishop Ussher had figured out, I guess you could say he was interested in sex. He looked at all the begats in the Bible and went back and concluded that the world was created in 4004 BC on a Thursday afternoon, I think he said. And now we know that the planet's over 4 billion years old and the universe over 13 billion years. Suddenly, we're not the big shots we'd like to think we are. And so our view of things has changed, and it's all in the direction of saying there are lots of planets and lots of life, and maybe it'll wake some earthlings up that we ought to change our behavior a little bit. Because there are, a couple of other figures. I'm a numbers man. The world is a special place for us, but it would appear that there are beings all over the place, and we have to allow for colonization, migration. I mean, look at North America. When Columbus discovered the Americas, if you will, there were people here, but not a lot of them. A heck of a lot more now because of colonization and migration, and for all kinds of different reasons. Man is not limited to one way of thinking about things, and so it's been a heck of a ride for me. First lecture in 1967. That was a long time ago, Anyway, that's to give a kind of sense of where I'm coming from. Data, evidence, basic rule: have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear. Is that a good introduction?
I just sat back and smiled, my friend. Just sat back
Good.
And smiled, much like the rest of our audience. Now, you are coming to British Columbia here in just a couple weeks to speak at the Questers Conference, and a good friend of mine who is also part of my team with Spaced Out Radio, Corey Greaves, she is helping put on that event. So I'm going to actually try and sneak down there to actually meet you firsthand.
Well, that would be great. I have spoken in British Columbia, but certainly not in Salmon Arm. Is it Salmon Arm or Salmon Arm?
Salmon Arm. Like the fish and then arm. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't get a chance to get to a new place very often. That's a new one for me.
It's a beautiful area. A beautiful area. You're going to be very, very impressed. So I'm going to try and get down there. That would be the weekend of September 29th, 30th, and October 1st is when you'll be back in the British Columbia area. So I recommend anybody in British Columbia or Washington State to make their way up to the Okanagan into Salmon Arm and actually take in this Questers Conference. It's going to be fantastic as you're the keynote speaker. You still enjoy doing that?
Yes. The simple answer is I'm a Leo. I was born July 29th. Me and Peter Jennings and Benito Mussolini, famed orator, Yes, the crazy thing is, here I am. I just turned 83 a couple of weeks back, and a month back, and I do enjoy speaking, partly because I tend to be a people person, and people respond very well. I enjoy it. So I'm lucky that I'm comfortable doing something that somebody will pay me to do and that I can enjoy doing. And what more could a guy ask for? I'm my own boss. It doesn't mean I never make a mistake, but I haven't missed any lectures so far. So it's fun, and it's intriguing because the facts have moved in the direction of what I've been thinking, what I believe, if you will. And I'm sure there are people debunkers who have suddenly come to the realization that they're full of baloney, which I think they are, about UFOs anyway. So the truth will out. The truth will set you free, somebody said. And no, I don't speak for free. It's against the rules.
See, I'm still at that point where I have to. I haven't made it to that level yet. Maybe one day.
Well,
maybe one day. That's what we're striving for with this whole radio show.
Well, I'm glad there are people doing it. And, when you rattle off all the ways people can listen, that's impressive to me. As I say, growing up in New Jersey with New York City 18 miles away, think of all the people who can choose to join us for an evening of talk. I call it talk and fun. What the heck? And if people don't like it, the nice thing is they can turn you off, and they can't turn me off. I'm not vulnerable, in other words. You can't, I wonder if somebody's got a weapon that you can use through your telephone and clobber the people on the... let's forget that one.
Now, today is the 65th anniversary of the Flatwoods Monster, and when we had Frank Ficino on here a couple months ago, and unfortunately Frank had planned on joining us, but due to Hurricane Irma and him living in Daytona, Florida, he's currently trying very hard and working as much as he can to try and take care of his ill mother and clean up the property at the same time, so he unfortunately had to cancel for tonight. But he was telling us a story about how he had to really bug you to look into this story about the Flatwoods Monster, and when you finally got there, you seemed pleasantly surprised. What do you remember about Frank bugging you?
Well, I remember that he was very enthusiastic, and until I got to know him, I didn't know all the reasons for his enthusiasm. And in case people are wondering, yes, I have been to Flatwoods more than once, and it was a pleasure. You're in the middle of nowhere, kind of. That's not an insult. It's just reality. A far cry from New Jersey. New Jersey, for people who don't know it, New Jersey is the most densely populated state. More people per square mile than any other place. I won a bottle of wine on an airplane for knowing that. And back in the slow flying days, the pilot would ask questions, and the winner would, which is the most densely populated state, and the winner would get a prize. A bottle, can you imagine getting a bottle of wine on an airline? I did not open it on the plane, but anyway. Now, I remember being impressed with the people I talked to because, and when you see the place, you can understand I mean, a bunch of kids playing ball, and they see this thing come down, and they dash over there, and they wake up some people who go up the hill and see this crazy Flatwoods Monster, big thing. It was about 10 feet tall. Who knows? It's an estimate, of course. But when you go up the hill, and you can see that there's an open area over there, which is where it landed, and this thing, I don't know whether it was mechanical, I doubt if it was biological, and got out, scared the heck out of him, to tell you the truth. So I was there more than once to Flatwoods. We had a conference, and I was speaking, and Frank spoke, and I've enjoyed working with Frank. He's got a lot of enthusiasm, and he works hard to dig out real witnesses. In other words, I'm not just for stories. That's not good enough for me. You want facts and data. Talk to the woman who was the mayor of the town, and she was a witness too. So I was impressed with being there and with the people that I was lucky enough to talk to. And of course, a lot of those people are dead now, but it happens to us all sometime. Not tonight, I don't think, but Flatwoods is an interesting case because many witnesses who saw the thing, no benefit to be gained from lying. And, you know, there's always been the question, what the heck are the aliens doing here anyway? And you'll get as many answers as you get people, I guess, but I think one thing we need to understand today, much more than we would have 50 years ago, is that the people of Earth are a threat to the neighborhood. People look at me, what do you mean a threat? Well, you realize that we figured out that the major source of energy in the universe is nuclear fusion. That's what goes on in all the stars. Look, 100 years ago, we thought the sun was a mass of burning gas. No big deal. In 1932, we finally discovered the neutron. It had been around all the time, you understand. And then in 1938, we figured out fission and fusion. And we progressed in our earthly ways. You can see the difference. Why do I bring up nuclear? Not just because I'm a nuclear physicist, but because if you want a lot of energy in a small package, say for a propulsion system or a bomb, nuclear is the way to go. And you can see the progression. In 1944, and I do remember 1944, a big bomb was a 10-ton blockbuster. It released the energy of 10 tons of dynamite, and it took a big B-29 to carry it. In 1945, we stepped up a notch. The first atomic bomb fission device, and it released the energy of 15,000 tons of dynamite. One stinking weapon. In 1952, the first fusion device, an H-bomb, if you will, one single bomb released the energy of 10 million tons of dynamite. And a few years later, the Russians set off Tsar Bomba, they called it, an incredible device that released the energy of 57 million tons of dynamite. One bomb. You got to step back and say, well, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things. One of them is that we can use fusion to bother other civilizations. So in one fell swoop, you go from 10 to 15,000 to 10 million to 57 million tons of dynamite in a short period of time. That means we're a threat to the neighborhood because we can come out and bother them and take our brand of friendship, which any rational person would say was hostility. What do? The budget on the planet this year is only $1 trillion for things military. So the very technique that will get us to the stars, nuclear fusion, look, and I'm not saying that casually. I worked on a study of fusion propulsion for deep space travel in 1962. And our conclusion was that all it takes is dough and you can go. I'm not saying there aren't other better techniques. I don't know what they are, but because progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. But fusion is the best we know, and we can use it. And I would expect everybody in the local neighborhood is looking out for others who are setting off fusion devices, because that means they can come and bother them. It won't take long. I mean, our first long-distance radio wave was in 1901. We're a little slow on the uptake. And so our place in the universe and our concept about others, anybody who sees that we have dropped, and this surprises people, we have exploded 2,000 nuclear weapons on this planet. Only 2 of them on people, thank goodness. But 2,000 on this planet. So everybody in the neighborhood knows that the Earth is a place where there are idiots who build nuclear weapons, and people starve on top of that. So it's the sense of perspective that one needs to realize we've joined what we would think of as a select community of one, namely us, who can build big bad bombs. But we're one who can go to other places and bother them. And the fusion tells us that. And so we're not innocents, in other words. And the neighborhood, I can't believe that there's any advanced civilization that doesn't pay attention to who the heck is setting off nuclear weapons, or the next step up, whatever that might be. Fusion's bad enough, in other words, in terms of energy to be released. So I want people to change their thinking about attitudes and life and what goes on out there. I've got a great-grandson, 10 years old, and gee whiz, what's the world going to be like when he gets to be my age? Wow. Let's hope it's not setting off bombs, big bombs.
I know
everywhere.
the feeling. I know the feeling. I have a 4-year-old son myself, and, it's scary to think what could be happening. I'm getting a few questions here in our chat rooms, Stanton, in regards to the atomic era. Do you think that's what basically put us as the Kmart blue light special in the middle of the universe, that we were detonating these giant bombs and they were getting bigger and bigger, and the aliens basically came over to see what was going on?
Well, I think they've come here for thousands of years, frankly. And look, for all I know, we're somebody's colony. They dropped all the bad boys and girls on one place, a penal colony. We don't know, but I think that would certainly be, when you're looking out, you want to be sure that you're protecting your people. That's what government's job, whether it's in a city, in a country, or on a planet. And we shouldn't limit our world. I run into people who think that you can't get here from there, that the stars are too far away, and so there's no way these could be alien, etc. Let me guarantee you that you can get here from there. Not easily, not cheaply. And if you look at all the things we've done, progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. I mean, I'll use a strange term for most people. I used a slide rule when I started work in industry. It's a little stick with a slide, and you can do multiplication and square roots and things like that. When I started work in industry, everybody did. Nobel Prize winners did. I haven't seen a slide rule in use for a very long time now. We have, you can buy a pocket calculator for what, $5? To do everything the slide rule did and a heck of a lot more. This little crazy solid state device. And if I told you that, 1947, when Roswell happened, that people were using slide rules to do calculations, and then suddenly they got the first solid state devices, and it's incredible what we have command of, if you will. But I'm glad to be alive now. I wouldn't trade it for the old times. But we got to do better thinking. That's what I'm concerned about.
What do you think, looking back when you started in the field of ufology, and we're going to get more to the Flatwoods here in a moment, but I just thought about this question after listening to what you said. What do you think has been the biggest difference in change in the field of ufology from when you started to where we are today?
Well, when I started, I'm the original civilian investigator of the Roswell incident. Okay, began that in the 70s. And that gave us evidence that there are others out there. You could talk all you wanted before that, but so people see strange things in the sky. But 1947, the Roswell incident says these things are inhabited. There were bodies on board the wreckage. There were 2 crashes in 47 in New Mexico. And, you know, I was in England and on a panel at a conference, and some guy was a British astronomer. He said, why would anybody go to New Mexico, for goodness sakes? All there is sand. Well, I said, have you ever been there? Well, no. I said, well, I have. And I take it you're not aware that 2 of the 3 nuclear weapons laboratories in the United States are in New Mexico? Well, no. And that the place where we were firing all the captured German V-2s was in New Mexico, White Sands Proving Ground. And one of the advantages of New Mexico is there aren't many people there. So if you want to test something like a big bomb or fire off a rocket, there's plenty of place to do it without killing everybody, unlike my New Jersey where I grew up. So we've got to get people thinking. And we've got to expand our own thinking. And we also have to start acting responsibly. And I feel there's been progress as an old guy, and judging by the questions and stuff. And I find that people are very interested in the subject, and that most of them have gotten by the notion that you can't get here from there. And that suddenly means that, hey, there's a lot going on, and we better pay attention. And that's good. We've made progress.
Getting to the Flatwoods Monster, when did you first hear about this case, and what made it so different from any other case that was presented to you?
Well, it was different there were a number of witnesses to this, I'll call it a creature, but I don't think of it as a creature, a mechanical device, whatever it was. There were a number of witnesses. The people had nothing to gain who told these stories. And Frank spoke to people. Frank Fascino. He's written a book, and you can look him up on the web, of course. So people have matured in their acceptance, and also we have seen in that period of time the development of nuclear weapons. Big ones, really big ones, which change the picture of whether you can get here from there and what you can do once you get here. And you'd think the duty number 1 of any civilization should be to not have their people destroyed by somebody else. And that becomes meaningful when you realize what destructive power we have at our fingertips. And I think it's one of the major miracles of our time that we haven't set off more nuclear weapons on people. Oh, we're spending a ton of money, and we're acting nastily and so forth. But Flatwoods was a good case for recognizing that normal, everyday people have seen, heard, touched, if you will, extraterrestrial craft and bodies. And boy, that changes the picture of the world around us. And when we really take that in, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, as they say. It's out. are we grown up enough to not use the nuclear genie on people? I hope so.
So when you found out about the Flatwoods Monster and you did your research and learned that people weren't in it for the money, they just wanted to know what the heck was going on.
Yes.
Did you immediately feel that that was a place you needed to go, or did you need some convincing?
Well, when I'm invited, I go. That's the rule. Have saucers, we'll talk, so to speak. Yeah, I was intrigued. And, I'm not trying to tell you that West Virginia is the most advanced place on the planet at all. It isn't. But I can tell you that I found decent, honorable people there. As I said, the mayor of the town was a witness, a woman at that. And when you talk to those people, you knew something special had happened. Just the way they talk about it, they didn't assume, perfectly normal to see a flying saucer, take off, fly away at high speed, without noise, et cetera, et cetera. And they were fearful of talking until they were sure that the situation was right. But they certainly welcomed me, and nobody threw any eggs at me there or anyplace else, for which I am eternally grateful. Flatwoods was intriguing, and especially since I got to know Frank, somebody who worked so hard to find the right people, find the witnesses, treat the people decently. And I didn't feel alone, in other words, as a lone voice in the wilderness. Not at all.
So in your estimation, when you started learning about this and put the puzzle pieces together, what happened on September 12th, 1952?
Well, some darn old flying saucer ran into some trouble and had to land, and was seen by some local people, and then took off. And, that's a very simple sequence. And as far as we know, there was no nuclear explosion. And there's another part of this, too, that Flatwood seems to illustrate. You've got two separate problems from a pragmatic viewpoint. How do you get here from another star system, on the one hand? And how do you behave in the atmosphere where the conditions are, how do you move the vehicle there? And we have an analogy. I wonder how many people realize that our nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, huge monsters over 1,000 feet long, they can operate for 18 years without refueling, which comes as a great shock to a lot of people. I mean, if you're a ship captain and somebody says, well, you won't need a gas tank for 18 years, that's different than saying, well, let's see now, you can go 10,000 miles and then you better refuel, which doesn't take you that long. So it changes the picture entirely. And I think recognition that, isn't it nice that beings can do that? Now, in the atmosphere, you've got air pressure, you've got gravitational field, and so forth. It's an entirely different environment. And, those aircraft carriers that can go 18 years without refueling, the airplanes on board, typically, say, 75, how long can they operate without refueling? 2 hours, maybe, if you're lucky, watch what you're doing. So it gives you an entirely different picture of what can go on and what we didn't know about. And, in order to learn something, there has to be something you didn't know before, right? So flying saucers force us to look around and see what didn't we know and what else is there that we don't know. And it changes everything when you realize that, holy cow, these guys can get here from way out there. They can move around the atmosphere, like there's no tomorrow. noiselessly, make right-angle turns at high speed, stop on a dime, go up and down, back and forth. That's a whole new ballgame. And as I said, I'm so glad we haven't been using nuclear weapons. We do use nuclear propulsion, and that we do have aircraft carriers. We have, look, submarines. What's kept the peace? Mutually assured destruction, because our enemies know that we have ships called submarines that can go around the world underwater and where you can't find out where they are. Well, if you bomb me and you know that I've got systems that can bomb you back and you don't know where they are, that changes the mutually assured destruction kind of thing. It's a whole new ballgame if I can't find my enemy, but he can bomb me if he wants. So it's time we stand up and realize that maybe we ought to act decently to each other. I should mention about submarines. During World War II, German U-boats, you see them in the crossword puzzles, U-boat, could stay underwater for about a day. They needed oxygen for the diesel engine. And so that was a restriction on what you could do. But now a submarine, nuclear-powered submarines, have gone around the world underwater, which is a very impressive feat when you look at it from the viewpoint of, say, 1945. So things are different, and we, unless we recognize that, we won't adjust our behavior to be different.
When it came to the Flatwoods Monster, why were you so convinced that we were dealing with something extraterrestrial instead of some sort of humanoid technology?
Well, because as far as I know, we didn't have any technology that could duplicate that. And because there's a whole bunch of other data from other places indicating there's a lot of this going on. This isn't an isolated case, and we get rid of this and there's no evidence for flying saucers. Loads of cases all over the place. And people forget, we've got physical trace cases. It isn't just things in the sky. Ted Phillips, a man in Missouri, has collected more than 4,000 physical trace cases where people see a saucer on or near the ground, and after it leaves, one finds physical trace evidence, burn circles, burn rings, landing gear marks. We have multiple witness radar visual sightings. There's all this other stuff. And so the evidence keeps piling up. And you also might ask, so if there wasn't anything to this, why is the government lying so often about it? And when you look at Roswell, 1947, and crash saucers, bodies, you can understand the need for keeping secrets.
I understand with the time, it was very difficult. I mean, we're coming out of World War II, just before the Korean era. There's a big jump in technology with Project Paperclip and everything along those lines, testing out, like you said, the German V-2 rockets. When this happened, being 5 years after Roswell, it was pretty much at the tail end of this UFO wave across the United States. Do you think the public was shocked that it was happening again to this extent, or do you think that because it was in mild little West Virginia that they didn't even pay attention?
It was a mix. There were people who paid attention, and there were people who say, oh, that's a bunch of baloney. The will not to believe in anything new, different, special is fairly widespread. It's easier to reject it. This, what your eyes just saw, well, that's imagination. It's not, can't be, so therefore it isn't. And we take that attitude fairly often, unfortunately. So times have changed, no question about it, but still, there have only been about a dozen PhD theses done about flying saucers. There's room for a lot more, believe me. In one of my books, Top Secret Magic, I have a list of 10. This goes back a number of years now. That's about Majestic 12. And, after the war, great patriotic war, people trusted governments for a while. Not terribly long, but for a while. And so you had a choice. Do I let my world be upset by these crazy new things? I mean, alien beings, what are we talking about here? Can't be. And, isn't it funny that one of the most frequent questions is, why don't they land on a White House lawn and say, hi, guys? And you have to point out, and I know this bothers some people, the President of the United States does not speak for now it's over 7 billion Earthlings. And it's hard to imagine. They don't want to come down and have a cup of coffee. They seem not to. Of course, I don't speak to the ants that I encounter along the way when I walk over to the store. There are plenty of them on the ground. And I don't talk to them, they don't talk to me. So maybe it's not so strange. But the ants aren't a threat to everybody. Anybody who's got a bunch of nuclear weapons with the capability to build them is a threat to other people.
Alfred was asking in the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club if you believe there was some sort of air war, secret air war with extraterrestrials in 1952 and after that.
Well, certainly 52, the number of sightings, starting in the first few months of the year, went up rapidly. Of course, Korean War was on. I got out of high school in 1951, and an awful lot of the kids I went to school with were drafted. And we were killing people in the Korean War, long distance away. So I think that we were waking up slowly, and the government certainly wasn't telling us, hey, look, we thought you'd like to know what's going on. There was none of that. Look, in World War II, let's get the numbers straight here. We nice guy Earthlings killed 50 million people. We destroyed 1,700 cities. We made a mess. World War II, one stinking war, and I mean that literally. And I'm a nuclear guy, but it's man's behavior that's the problem. The atom is neutral. It doesn't do anything. It's the people building the systems that do things, bad things. So we have a chance to behave in a decent way, to use our new knowledge for the betterment of mankind. And I hope we take that chance, as opposed to the evil, it's not the aliens who are evil, it's us. We have met the enemy and he is us, or something like that, somebody said.
Going back to Flatwoods, when you talk to people about this creature, what exactly was it, in your definition, that they saw?
I think it was a mechanical device with intelligent life inside of it. I don't know how else to put it. You're in a cocoon, kind of. When you're in a saucer and nobody can catch you, and you can land where you please and do what you please, that's one thing. But if you're stuck and have to land and have to deal with the Earthlings, you better be prepared. And not commit suicide, in other words, by being out in the open where somebody can shoot at you. And we have shot at beings. So it was a pseudo-being, if you will. I don't want to say a dummy. It's wrong terminology. But I think what people saw moving around on that hillside was a intelligent being inside of a sophisticated device. You don't want to walk around where anybody can shoot you. And, it doesn't take a lot of looking to see there's a lot of shooting going on this planet.
So you think it was almost like a cloaked shield that was surrounded by an alien creature inside?
Well, yeah, it surrounded the alien creature, yes. I think so. And, You can understand that. The first rule for anybody in war is make sure you can get home. That's what it's all about. And so that means you can't leave yourself vulnerable, especially when there are a bunch of idiots around. You realize that during World War II, we had bombing raids over Europe with over 300 airplanes, a fleet of them, dropping bombs as they flew along. That's an incredible thought, and I hope that my great-grandson and your son and so forth don't have to see that happening. It's not a pretty picture. And so I think from the aliens' viewpoint, they know we're a primitive society. Look how we spend our effort. Look at the difference between cities where people can walk around safely and cities where they're subject to being jumped by anybody who wants to steal something from them. And there's plenty of that going on this planet. And look at the oceans. Pristine, maybe, but you put all those nuclear-powered ships, not so pristine anymore.
The people who had witnessed this creature, they apparently started getting sick by smelling some sort of noxious fumes, and possibly the ship was leaking something. Did you ever talk to anybody about what that sickness was like? Actually, you hold on. We're going to get to that question right after this break. Stanton Friedman is our guest. We are talking about the 65th anniversary of the Flatwoods Monster. One more hour with Stanton after this. On this topic, Everett Thiemer from the Encounter Online coming in hour number 3 with more Spaced Out Radio. We are coming back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter Online is S.O.R's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an S.O.R. Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers
you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and S.O.R.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, paranormal investigator Shane Sirois is going to join us. We're going to talk about paranormal and ET contacts starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, 1 a.m. if you're in New Brunswick. That's just for you, Mr. Friedman. And we get going at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us. We're live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. We would much appreciate it. Still waiting for the password from Bill Cardwell. Oh, there it is. Oligophrenia. Oligophrenia is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty S.O.R. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join our S.O.R. Space Travelers Club on Facebook if you want to connect in with the live chat. It's a packed house in there tonight. You can follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott S.O.R. You listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our YouTube, make that our iTunes channel. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, read up on the encounter online, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, check out UFO Seekers and Contact TV videos as well. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Back again for hour number 2 is the legendary ufologist Stanton Friedman. We like to call him around these parts the Wayne Gretzky of ufology because he's just that darn good and that darn important to our research in this field. Mr. Friedman, welcome back.
I'm delighted to be here, even at this ungodly hour.
I know. You know, if you moved west, it would be simpler. I'm just saying. I'm throwing it out there, but I know you're an East Coast guy.
Well, we moved here from California. I spent 14 years in California altogether, a couple of different times. And, you know, I had a call from a friend, an old friend. He said, Stan, what are you doing back there? Don't you miss California? And I said, well, yeah, Mother Nature was very generous with California. All kinds of places to see, not just Yosemite and the ocean and the Golden Gate and all that stuff. And it took me a while to get used to not having drive-by shootings and to have people care about this subject. But I've learned to live without the smog. No smog back here in Fredericton. And so I can appreciate what it's like on the West Coast, and I can appreciate what it's like on the east of the East Coast, where I am in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And I should mention, I do have a website, and people can go there. I don't give out my phone number on the air, but the website is www.stantonfriedman.com, but I understand that sometimes it's sort of off the air, and now with the hurricanes and all that sort of stuff, who knows what's going on. But I do have 6 books out there, and each covers a different subject. And I know there are some people that don't like to read, but I like to read. I grew up reading, that's where the action was. Didn't have television when I was a kid. So I try to get people to understand that you can read several times faster than you can listen. That sounds funny, but, you speak at 120 words a minute maybe, and you can read 500, 1,000, even more words a minute. So you can get a lot more information if you're reading instead of listening. Listen to your radio, but read the books too, and the data, and the solid information that you can put in tables and graphs and charts and all that sort of stuff. It's a great world. Teach your kids. Learn from reading. I'm a proponent of that, as you can imagine.
Me too. Getting back to what I asked you right before when we got cut off to break, and that was my fault because normally I'm a stickler for time, but I got caught up in the conversation. Joe was asking, there was rumors that the Flatwoods Monster was spewing out some sort of noxious fumes and possibly leaking something. Was there any trace evidence left behind, like oil or blood drops or anything like that?
Not that I know of. What's noxious to one may be joyful to another. I don't know. I have not heard reports of, say, people keeling over unconscious or dead or anything like that. So that doesn't mean that they didn't have the ability to do that. But, flying saucers, strange way to put it, they act with a certain amount of consideration. They respond in self-defense. There are a number of cases around, down near Cuba, radar picks up saucers, and they send up 2 planes to tell them to stay the heck out of our territory, and they ignore them. So what should we do now? The pilot asks, and the ground controller says, shoot them down. So the first pilot says he's got a radar lock on, and suddenly the second pilot screams over the radio that the first plane just got zapped. Exploded. And I think that was just a response. When you lock on a target, when you're a pilot and you lock on a target, the other guy can determine that you've got a lock on. And he's got to do something. And you don't think about it. You take action. You zap them. Zap is a convenient word for whatever these guys use. But they seem to be not willy-nilly kill, but take care. And if the guy's chasing you don't get the message, that's too bad. You got to do something. And so I think they consider life, how shall I put this, more sacred than we do when you look at the figures on how many get killed in our wars. And not very pleasantly with bombs dropping on you and stuff like that.
Were people said to get sick off of those noxious fumes or come up with any sort of disease or anything?
Not that I know of. I'm not saying that they weren't coughing their heads off or stuff like that, but there were young men who had been playing baseball not far away and who went over to see what this thing was that landed over there. I've heard no mention when I was in Flatwoods or from Frank or others that there were A, people keeling over dead, B, wholesale sickness. People going out of their heads or throwing up or doing any of the other things that humans do when they're very uncomfortable. I heard none of that. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but absence of evidence is not evidence for absence, in other words, because you don't know, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. But and even with regard to Roswell, where they captured, there were aliens in the crashed vehicle, and there were lots of people. I mean, Roswell was the home of the only atomic bombing group in the entire world. We tend to forget that. They dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and 2 more at Operation Crossroads a year later. So I don't know of any examples from that situation of people who were close to the alien bodies who got sick. So I'm not saying you shouldn't be careful if you happen to run across one.
When it comes to the Flatwoods, how long did this go on? How long was that creature sighted for?
Less than a day. I mean, the thing was on the ground. The boys had time enough to dash over there and start up the hill, and they got, I can't remember her name, Mrs. whatever, May. But that whole thing, it took only a few hours. There weren't people, cowering in their homes because of the danger from what's out there. They came, they saw, they left.
Do we know what happened to it? Do we think this creature, whatever it was, got picked up? Or maybe
yes.
Okay. So was there other...
because they were looking around, and there were people... Look, any hunter will tell you that when you got a new type of game, you want to capture it or shoot it or kill it or put a net over it or do something with it. It's unique, it's different, etc. So that would be a natural stimulus. On the other hand, if people are dying all over the place, you say, let's get out of here. This isn't safe. So I've heard no evidence of wholesale distress resulting in death, serious injury, or anything like that at Flatwoods.
I want to get to a point of some of the skeptics of this case. Joe Nickel was very...
He's skeptical of all cases.
Exactly. He was very, very critical of everything, claiming this to be a meteorite and, people just hallucinating, and they must have been on drugs or whatever it was. What is your opinion of Joe Nickel regarding this case?
Well, Joe Nickel regarding all cases. We've met, as a matter of fact, years ago. There's a basic rule. Don't bother me with the facts my mind's made up. but the public doesn't know, I'm not going to tell them. So you leave out anything that doesn't contribute to your solution for the case. If the first explanation doesn't work, try another one, because we know there can't be any real flying saucers, and that's Joe. He's not a skeptic. He's a debunker. There's a difference. The skeptic says, I don't know what's going on here. The debunker says, I know what's going on here. Nothing. These people are making up stories. People are lying. They're not telling the truth. Nothing to it. And that's Joe. And I'm sorry, but that's not science. That's belief systems. And as I say, the basic rule for the debunkers is don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up. And look, ufology isn't the only area where this happens. There are religious fanatics, who take a viewpoint because they know it can't be. The facts be damned. Well, I'm a nuclear physicist. I can't do that. I have to go where the facts, and I have to be able to say, I don't know, straightforward. In other words, when you say you've got alien spacecraft, that doesn't mean you can say what town they're from, what their driver's license would show, or anything like that. It means they're not from here. That's what it shows. And so we have to be content with the best we can do. And sometimes you have to say, I don't have enough data. Now the Air Force has had no qualms about lying. Let me mention the largest study ever done for the United States Air Force, Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14, data on 3,201 cases, published in 1955, hundreds of charts, tables, graphs, and maps. And they didn't distribute the report, they distributed a press release. And in the press release, it was stated, on the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those properly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. Well, that took care of that. And the problem is that I had a copy of the report when I first read that. It was at the University of California, Berkeley Library, and I was surprised because I'd read 10 books and none of them had mentioned it. Anyway, when you looked at the data, the unknowns weren't 3% or 6% or 12%. They were 21.5%. And they were completely separate from a category called insufficient information. And the people who did the study asked an obvious question. Okay, we got thousands of reports here. Is there any difference between the unknowns and the knowns? Maybe we just missed the boat. What they found was the probability that the unknowns were just misknowns was less than 1%. They looked at 6 different observable characteristics, appearance, size, color, shape, speed, that sort of thing. And the two groups don't match. And 3,200 sightings is a darn good-sized collection. It's not 3 reports kind of thing, or 20, or 200. It's 3,000. And so it's proof that the government was lying, and it was the Secretary of the Air Force who I just quoted. But it says we've got to allow room for what we don't know, what we can't do, even if you can't hand me a piece of this stuff and say, see, that proves it. Considering that there have been so many wars, can the United States really afford to put on the table everything it has learned from examination of wreckage and bodies? I don't think so. Because the Russians and the Chinese, if they get what we know plus what they know, and we don't know what they know, they may beat us to a super weapon, a super transport system, whatever. You can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. It's an important lesson.
When it comes to Joe Nickel, he had stated, and I find this to be very, very obtuse for an observation. If I can, and I'm trying to be polite here, he says that the creature, in his opinion, from listening to eyewitness accounts, that resembled an owl, that they were actually viewing a barn owl and not a 10-foot creature.
Well, it's funny. I ask people in Flatwoods. You get to meet a lot of people, walking around yourself. And I said, does anybody ever have any history of 10-foot owls? And uniformly, nobody knows of 10-foot owls. I mean, it's one of those explanations that when you start looking, you say, impossible. It's pretty hard to hide a 10-foot owl when you stop to think about it. Whether it's flying or walking around on webbed feet or anything like that. It's one of those, you can get away with explanations like that as long as the people haven't seen the data. As soon as you look at the data, you say, well, that's baloney. Very simple. And look, I've put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. I've done debates. There's a radio program called Coast to Coast, as you're aware of. And I debated Seth Shostak on that. Dr. Seth Shostak is one of the wheels in the SETI movement, SETI. Supposed to stand for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It really stands for Silly Effort to Investigate. I don't know whether you've heard that before, but what the heck. And so you look at the evidence. That's the thing. And Joe doesn't look at the evidence. He makes claims without providing any evidence. And look, physical trace cases, as I said, there are thousands of them. And I had soil analyzed from the Delphos, Kansas case. I was living in California at the time and called several places. What's the best lab for analyzing dirt that won't grow anything? Because people have kept soil samples and they don't grow anything that were where the saucer was. And I found the best lab for doing that, and I gave them samples from the ring that was beneath where the saucer sat and from nearby. And there was much too high a level of soluble salts. The ground was too salty to grow anything. That's physical evidence. I mean, you can't laugh it off. And there are other cases where people have found that too. And there's been more than one test. I had the first test done. Ted Phillips, the expert on such cases, who lives in Missouri, Delphos is in Missouri, or Kansas rather, but right next door. And, the results are unequivocal. It won't grow anything. Now, some people would say, prove it to me. I want the alien being you say is there. Why don't you have one, Stan? Because it's the nature of the beast that I don't have one. We are not the most advanced beings around. Think about it for a minute. We didn't know that there were neutrons. When we started to try to figure out what's matter made of. And it was only in 1932 that we found out that there were particles that weren't charged. They make up everything. So we got a lot to learn.
I do have a few questions coming from our audience here, a little bit off topic, but we like to include the audience in what they do because it's rare that they get a chance to speak with you, my friend. Joe is asking, Stanton, have you ever held in your hands anything that you believed was of extraterrestrial origin?
Well, I did at some museum handle a meteorite, but that's it. No. Look, I've never seen an alien. I've never handled a piece of alien wreckage. Look, in industry, I chased neutrons and gamma rays for 14 years. That was my job. Radiation shielding for compact military nuclear systems. I worked on nuclear airplanes. I worked on nuclear power plants for space, stuff like that. I never saw a neutron or a gamma ray, but they're real too. It's the nature of the beast, so to speak. So no, I've never, except for touching a meteorite, which is from outer space, I've never seen or handled a piece of alien wreckage.
Darren is asking, Stanton, if you could get to the bottom of any UFO incident out there, which one would you choose?
Well, I've certainly spent a lot of time on Roswell just because it's been a lot of effort and because of the people involved. I mean, I was the first to talk to Major Jesse Marcel, and he was only the intelligence officer for the only atomic bombing group in the entire world. You don't get to be that without having demonstrated loyalty, good sense, straightforward thinking, et cetera. People are depending on you for that. So I'd like to get to the bottom of Roswell, and I think we have, but I haven't seen a piece of the wreckage. I haven't handled a piece of it. I don't have the footprints. And there are physical trace cases where people actually find tiny footprints. And they don't find the boots, I don't think. But, we'll have to wait for something else like that. So there are loads. Look, in terms of numbers, the Mutual UFO Network receives over 500 reports a month of flying saucers. Let's be generous and say only 10%, not the 21.5% of Blue Book Special Report 14. Only 10% can't be identified. That's still a heck of a lot of cases going on all the time. And, you can't throw those away. And, people ask the wrong question. The question isn't, are all UFOs alien spacecraft? The question is, are any? Hank Aaron set all kinds of records. He certainly didn't get a hit every time he went to bat. The basketball coach knows, yes, most people are not 7 feet tall. Give me one. I don't want 10. One guy's enough on my team, So you got to ask the right question. Is there any evidence that flying saucers are real? You're damn right. Lots of it. And as a matter of fact, it does raise questions. My most recent book with Kathleen Martin, this is last September, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers. We try to figure out why some very smart people said some very stupid things. Dr. Edward U. Condon, who was in charge of the Condon study, the University of Colorado study, a world-famous physicist. He was president of the American Physical Society at one time. And he said something to the effect, and it's in the Condon report, that we don't expect that there will be alien life visiting for 10,000 years. What kind of a thing is that to say? We don't know what's going to be around in 100 years. 10,000? Forget it. Nonsense. And Philip Klass, he was a senior avionics editor for Aviation Week and Space Technology, wrote 3 anti-UFO books. He worked in Washington, so he was the go-to man. Whenever you needed a debunker, go to Phil, because he says all sightings have prosaic explanations, which simply isn't true when you look at all the large-scale scientific studies. And we try to figure out why. Now, Phil always claimed he never worked for any three-letter agency. What if it had 4 letters, Phil? He's dead now. But and I get the biggest laugh in my lecture when I show a copy of a check that he wrote me for $1,000. He claimed that one of the Majestic 12 documents was clearly fraudulent because it was done in the large pica type. But the National Security Council, his name is on it, used only the small elite type. And he challenged me, I'll give you $100 each for every top secret Umbra classified document that you have that, that is done in the same size and style type. Well, it turned out, I didn't find this out until later, he had never been to the Eisenhower Library. I spent weeks there. And I was planning to go there, so I went there, found 14. It's easy to tell the difference between pica type and elite type. And I sent him, I found 14. I had first gone to my files and found 20 done in pica type, but they didn't meet all his criteria. But I sent him the 14, and he wrote me a check for $1,000, limited 10. So, and then he got madder than heck when I published a copy of his check. threatened to sue me and so forth. I get great response from my audience. And I still don't know who he was working for or why he did. He was too smart not to know that he was lying. It's as simple as that. And the third guy, in fact, one of the members of this Majestic 12 team, Dr. Menzel from Harvard University, astronomy department, Donald Howard Menzel. And people say, well, how could he be a member of a group that knew all about crash saucers, alien bodies, and all this sort of stuff? Nonsense, Stan. Can't be. Well, it took a while. I had to get permission from 3 different people to look at his papers at Harvard, and was able to show that he had a longer continuous association with the National Security Agency, 30 years, of anybody. And nobody knew that while he was alive. No outsiders knew that, including me. I had one run-in with him, and I didn't like the man. But when I found the proof, he wrote to Jack Kennedy. They knew each other, even had breakfast together on occasions. I can prove that. He said, when we are properly cleared to each other, I can tell you more about the NSA. Not just the NSA, but the NSA. So you got to look for the evidence, and it's there. That was the book Top Secret Magic, of course. And it's strange. You don't have to look far once you're turned in the right direction by reading my books or a bunch of other books. The sighting that caught the public's attention initially was Kenneth Arnold's sighting, June 24th, 1947. And Dr. Bruce Maccabee, an optical physicist in a Navy research lab for over 30 years, he's retired now, has written an excellent book about the Arnold sighting. Goes into all kinds of detail. And that was 1947. And it got a lot of publicity. And none of the publicity really was talking about aliens. The thing that everybody knew was that we developed the atomic bomb in secret. Everybody was aware of that. So they can understand that there could have been secret programs that the public didn't know about. And a lot of people were saying, well, that's what this is. It's a secret government project. That's what Kenneth Arnold thought at first. And so there's data, there's evidence, and, there are other people. Bruce, as I say, has got a PhD in physics and worked for a Navy research lab and had a clearance for umpteen years. So there are sources of information that need to be consulted, unlike Joe Nickel. Don't bother me with the facts, my mind's made up. So I'm pleased to say that while I have never handled an alien body or a piece of an alien craft, it's probably just as well, but we have loads of evidence, and that's what counts.
Another question coming from one of our chat rooms, this one comes from Darren. What do you think about all these so-called UFOs seen around the space station before all of a sudden the space station cameras decide to go blip and they're off?
Well, I think it would be perfectly natural that the aliens would want to keep track of what our capabilities are. And so that means you follow the space program. There have been many sightings around nuclear sites. Malmstrom Air Force Base, UFO shows up over the front gate. This is out in some ways from town, of course, and underground stalls, if you will, for the ICBMs. And 10 nuclear-tipped missiles went offline, one after the other, when the saucer showed up at the gate, and caused a great deal of consternation, because that's impossible. Those systems are supposed to be, totally protected against any interference that would cause them not to work. And here are 10 of them, and it happened more than once. The Russians had a case where the UFO shows up, and would you believe the missiles went online, ready to fire? And fortunately, that stopped before any of them got launched. But It seems perfectly natural that aliens would want to know what our means of defense is. You don't go into battle without knowing what kind of weapons your enemy has. You know, you got to be ready to move, to take action.
Let's get to Bob's question. He's saying, I heard years ago that when radar was first invented and used, the sensitivity on them had to be dialed back because air control towers were picking up UFOs in space. Was there any truth to this?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I do know that when they were first testing radar in England, that there were autos going by that when the beam was in that direction, the car stopped. There are at least 2 books that go into electromagnetic interference cases. So the radar seems to discombobulate many systems. Internal combustion engines, of course, do have electronic sensitivity, if you will. So who knows?
Michael is asking, do you think there was more than one UFO involved in the Flatwoods case?
My first opinion is to say no. From talking to the witnesses and hearing the stories, I think there was one that was seen by the boys out there, and then when they came back and around the hill, same one. I don't think there was more than one there at that time. There certainly have been cases, many cases, more than 40% of the cases in 47 involved more than one object being seen at a time. So it wouldn't be too surprising. But, you know, pilot and a wingman, that's the standard approach. We use it.
All right, let's get to another question. This one comes from BTO. He's saying, Dr. Friedman...
Mr., please, no free doctorate.
All right. Mr. Friedman, do you know about the Sago, Utah cave drawings, and do you believe they may be synonymous with the Flatwoods Monster?
I can't say I do know. I know that there are cave drawings all over the place, and if people want to know about cases that date back a long time, there's a book called The Bible and Flying Saucers by Dr. Barry Downing. He's got a bachelor's in physics and a doctor of divinity. Divine physics is his beat. And he goes to both the Old and New Testaments and looks carefully at what's said in the Bible and finds evidence for flying saucers. I don't say that casually. Barry was a very sharp, well-educated, sensible researcher. But 2,000 years, you know, at least for the Bible, 2,500, 3,000, doesn't matter. Remember, our view of how old mankind is has changed. In 1650 or so, Bishop Ussher figured out that the world was created in 4004 BC. So that's 6,000 years ago, no big deal. Now we'd have to say, well, sorry guys, it's at least 4,000,004 BC, which is another ballgame entirely. We're much older, our society is, than we'd like to give it credit for.
Follow-up from BTO. Do you think there are any current UFO events that you may say are evident on being something credible?
Well, I think some of those 500 cases a month that are reported in MUFON are certainly credible. If you take any group of sightings, you know, it's like a good baseball player gets a hit, 1/3 of the time. They get paid a lot of money for that. The fact that he doesn't get a hit 2/3 of the time doesn't mean there are no good hits being made by them. So, yeah, I do.
Do you think MUFON is still quite a credible organization, considering there's been so much implicated on them, whether or not they're doctoring evidence, whether or not they're taking certain stories seriously, or if they're even government infiltrated? That rumor has gone around.
Well, okay. Certainly there are people who belong to MUFON that work for the government. You know, I don't deny that at all. But I think that MUFON is still credible. I was not happy. I read all the papers from the conference, 6 weeks ago in Las Vegas, which was well attended, and the focus was on the secret space program. And I read the papers, and I kept looking for evidence that, people from here flew off to Mars 20 years ago, and other things like that. And I have to say that at best I could say these reports were in my gray basket, not black, not white, maybe. So I think MUFON is credible. It's done a heck of a job, and it's had a long time. It certainly doesn't mean that everything that gets reported there is something that I would stake my life on, that it's all true. Most sightings can be explained. That's certainly true. Some people have lied. That's certainly true. You got a mishmash. But, again, you're looking for the hitter who gets a hit a third of the time instead of an eighth of the time. And we've got them. We've got those cases. So, I don't know how they're... it's funny, the secret space program, the theme, I don't know whether it was that attracted the people to this year's MUFON conference, or was it the fact that it was in Las Vegas, which is, many people like an excuse to go to Las Vegas, don't you think?
Oh, I think of a lot of other excuses to go to Las Vegas. Pretty much everything's an excuse. This conversation, for me, is an excuse to go to Las Vegas right now.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I just feel like you need to be there.
Well, I've been there. I wasn't at this year's conference. I am not saying I buy all those papers saying there was a secret space program. Quite the reverse.
All right, let's move on to another question. This one comes from Everett. He is asking, Stanton, do you think people should decide what is reliable information or evidence and what is fake?
Well,
pardon me, how do you? Pardon me.
You mean, how do you separate the fact from the fiction?
Absolutely.
It's a very important question, and that's why I tend to look more at older cases that have had a great deal of effort put into them. It's the quality of the evidence. And, if all you have is somebody saying, I saw this strange vehicle fly by me, that must have been a flying saucer from Zeta Reticuli, that's not enough. It might have been, but that's not enough. On the other hand, if you say, I had 3 different guys in 3 different locations all describing the same phenomena, when we got together, they each had seen it from a different direction, independently and so forth, that begins to get exciting. And when you look at the large-scale scientific studies, there is a volume of 12 papers that were presented at congressional hearings in 1968. 12 scientists. I was the only one of the 12 that didn't have a PhD. And there are references, there's data, there's things you can check. That's the kind of data you want. And so, yes, there's a lot of crummy stuff out there. So what? It's the good stuff that matters. And I'm satisfied we have enough good stuff to reach the conclusions that I mentioned earlier.
Do you think the outpouring of CGI on places like YouTube or Facebook is absolute disinformation, or just people trying to ruin the credibility of quality research?
I think it's a mix of things. I think there are people who like to take them down a peg. And so there have been fakes. It's a problem every police officer has, trying to sort out, the truth from the fiction. And there's been enough of that gone on over the last 70 years now, to say that there's plenty of evidence to say some of these things are extraterrestrial spacecraft. Most are not. So what? Not all isotopes are fissionable. Because not all are doesn't mean none are. So we have to watch our thinking about these things. Nobody's saying 100% of sightings are of alien spacecraft. Not at all.
I guess the reason why I ask that is because, so many people out there are having experiences, so many people out there are having some sort of sighting, and I'll put it bluntly. I held a ghost hunt. We're going to get more into this in hour number 3. Unfortunately, you're not going to be here. But we got an immaculate picture A skeptical lady, retired school teacher, only came on the tour because her best friend wanted to go and she came to keep her company, just decided to take random photos. And on one of the stairwells, and I run a paranormal tour at our local museum here, and in one of our stairwells, she caught this amazing photo of a spirit going up the stairs.
Wow.
And there was nobody in that area at that time. And the funny part about it is, I put it online saying, this is what we got. Because, you know what? We run everything on S.O.R. trying to be as extremely credible as possible. And trust me, I have hyped and called out these BS CGI things or whatever so many times. It would be terrible if I put something fake out there. Yeah. And it's amazing how many people who've never even heard of my town, let alone the museum that I'm at, have absolutely carved that picture. Like, our first instinct now is always, hammer it with what you think it is as opinion, and that's what it is. We don't investigate anymore. Are you noticing that with the younger generation of investigators now?
Well, to some extent, yes. Spending a lot of time sifting through evidence and data is not the standard approach anymore. Make a quick decision, do a quick look, and I'm smart enough to know what is or isn't and let it go at that. There's not as much dedication to scholarship, if I can put it so loftily. Yes.
Do you see that changing, though? Because so many times we've spoken on this show, and I've heard it on other shows, where we're seeing so many people talk about doing this scientific research, yet, Stanton, we continue to have people saying that their scientific research as fact when only it's opinion.
Well, yeah. There's a difference between saying, I think that what I saw was an alien, and, having footprints and pictures and so forth and so on. You have to get to a certain level of credibility with factual information. And there's a lot of, I don't know. We have to accept that. That's the way the world is. Ask any police officer. And I say when you get a lot of publicity for a crime, I've asked a police officer, a lot of publicity for a particular case, do you get a response from the public? Oh, yeah, we get loads of response. And how much of that is useful? A few %, but that's how we solve most crimes, he said. So, there's reality and there's wishful thinking. And I try to avoid the wishful thinking. Let's look at the facts.
Let's get to a question from Joe here. We're going to go into your area here, which is Roswell. He says some researchers say the Roswell craft came down because they were hit by lightning. Others say the craft became uncontrollable because of our radar testing in the area. What do you think brought down the Roswell craft?
Well, frankly, I think there was a mid-air collision produced by the radar that we know was on. We have to remember that at that time, there were no solid-state devices. That means your radar and other things had to be warmed up, so they'd leave them on. And we know from newspaper reports that they were expecting a rocket launch. This is in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of nowhere in New Mexico, believe me. And so I think that was probably they had the radar beam was on, but it wasn't rotating, just on, sending a beam out in the middle of nowhere. And so two saucers go along. As I said before, more than 40% of the cases involved more than one object being seen at a time. And I think what happened was there was a sudden glitch caused by that radar beam. It affected the propulsion system or the guidance system or whatever, and whammo. And in my first conversation with Jesse Marcel, he indicated that there probably had been a mid-air explosion. Why? Because the wreckage was strewn over such a large area, and there was no crater. Jesse served in World War II. When an airplane goes in, you usually find a pretty good-sized hole in the ground. It's got some fuel. It's going to explode. And so I think it was a mid-air collision caused by the radar beam. Not that it was aimed at the saucer. It was just sitting there, aimed in a certain direction without any particular relevance. And these two saucers come along, and they're too close. Uh-oh. We ran into a problem. What can I say? That's not surprising, is it? When we know that there was this factor that the beam was on and that it was just sitting there. So you'd run through the beam. How would you know it was there? Nobody puts up signs in the sky, beware of radar, folks. It doesn't work like that.
As time winds down, we only got about 5 minutes left with you tonight, my friend. How many aliens do you think survived both the crashes at San Augustine and Roswell? What do you think happened to them?
Well, I think they were kept in seclusion, if you will, in secret. People forget there are loads of bases that you can't enter without appropriate security clearances, that there are underground bases, also to keep them away from spies in the sky, the satellites and all that. But remember, we started 1957 with Sputnik. And after that, lots and lots of them. So I think that, rephrase the question. Say that again.
How many aliens do you think survived?
Oh, I think there may have been 2, maybe. It's pretty tough on guys inside if you suddenly hit the ground or you had a mid-air explosion. There's a crew compartment, but, you weren't expecting it. So maybe a couple, not forever.
Do you think that we just tested them or kept them to try and decipher what they were saying or thinking? What do you think we did with them?
I think we studied them. And I think in a multifaceted way, we'd monitor their vital signs and stuff like that. But I think we did learn to communicate with them. A guy in an advanced spaceship coming from someplace else, pretty sharp guy, one would think. And he'd learn to communicate with you if you didn't learn to communicate with them. We teach people new languages all the time. So I think that we kept them hidden, major secret. I just read something which was a surprise to me. I hadn't seen it before. I should have, I suppose. A briefing for President Reagan, supposedly. This was on the internet. Somebody called and left an address to check it out, and I did. It's 18 pages long, small print, and about Roswell and other places. And Reagan being briefed within a few months of when he became president about the aliens that were on board. And so I think we have a lot of information. But, you can't get inside somebody else's head. What's their intention? And the feeling in this paper, and I've seen it in many other places, is that these guys are not nasty. They're not out to destroy. Because if they were, they would have destroyed us already. We're a threat to the neighborhood, no question about it. Like I said, we have exploded 2,000 nuclear warheads, we nice guy Earthlings. Only 2 on people, thank goodness. But you have to pay attention when people have that kind of capability.
My friend, we got about 90 seconds left with you. What's coming up for you in the near future here that people should keep their eyes open for?
Well, if they go to my website that lists a few lectures I have coming up, I'm going to be in Michigan City, Indiana, to speak on Saturday, this coming Saturday. I'll be at a big deal in Little Rock, Arkansas later on. I'll be at Salmon Arm, British Columbia. And I don't know what other conferences I've got. I'm 83 years old. I'm getting tired of running around.
Well, we do appreciate you waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning your time to do this show for our audience, and we're about to wrap things up with you here. So I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for all the work that you have done in this field, because it is absolutely incredible, and I think with your stature and your education, you've brought a lot of credibility to what a lot of people would pretty much call as just sci-fi mind games, or something along those lines.
Well, I appreciate your comment, and I'll guarantee it isn't sci-fi games for me anyway. There's plenty of data. You got to go looking for it. Like I say, there's over a dozen PhD theses that have been done. The debunkers never talk about them.
No. Thank you, Stanton, for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Much the pleasure. Coming up in hour number 3, Everett Thiemer and Eric Markham, our resident scientists, are going to join us. We're going to continue to talk about monsters. We're going to continue to talk about ghosts, the paranormal, ETs. We're going to get into it all for the final hour here. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you continue to join us. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We will be back right after our final break of the night. Talk to you on the other side.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S.O.R with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S.O.R, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S.O.R. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S.O.R starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The S.O.R Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The S.O.R Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFOcop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio Live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio. And on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we get into paranormal and ET contact with investigator Shane Sirois. He talks about his own personal experiences and what he has learned from the field as well. It's going to be a great show indeed, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club. Oligophrenia. Oligophrenia is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty S.O.R. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. And you can connect with us during the show live on Facebook at our S.O.R. Space Travelers Club. All you got to do is sign in and join the nightly chat. Great people in there. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott S.O.R. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, and you can download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot, read up on the encounter online, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, or check out some great video footage from UFO seekers as well as Contact TV. Tonight, we bring in, for the final hour, our resident scientist, the preacher, Eric Markham, from the Encounter Online, Everett Themer. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Absolutely. And you know, what a pleasure it was to have Stanton Friedman on the show with us. You know, Frank Ficino, who did the show a couple of months ago, so wanted to be here for the anniversary, but like a lot of people, millions of people who were stuck with Hurricane Irma in Florida, he just couldn't get out of Daytona due to the fact that his mother is very ill and on oxygen, so he had to ride out the storm, and he couldn't do it. He's had about 20 hours sleep in the last week or so, just prepping for the storm, and then with the storm rolling through. So I thought Stanton did a great job, and what a pleasure it is to have a legend like him on Spaced Out Radio.
Definitely. Stanton is like the godfather of ufology.
Yes, he is.
Stanton mentioned many times.
I read his book years ago about the UFOs, and he makes a very compelling point that I think he's the one that first coined the phrase that there's more proof and eyewitness accounts that prove that UFOs exist than is necessary to convict somebody of murder and have them executed. It's out there.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to Amy on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. She just said, better wish Noonan, Georgia, a safe recovery from Irma as well, as they are about to get hit. Yes, Noonan, please be safe out there. And if you still have power, make sure you've got your supplies ready, because we want to make sure that all of you are joining us on Spaced Out Radio in the near future as well when this horrific storm blows on through. So please be safe out there as well. Thank you, Amy, for the reminder. See, being up here in Canada, I'm not as adverse to where a lot of these towns and states are. I know I should be, but I just want to say thanks, Amy, for doing that. I really appreciate that. So, anyhow,
Georgia's the next one west to me in North Carolina.
Well, I'm glad the forest fires here, and you guys have heard me talk about forest fires for the last 3 months, but the big three that were surrounding my area, I am proud to say, are, I think 2 of them are now 100% contained, and 1 of them is around 80 to 90% contained. Finally.
Mm-hmm.
You know what?
That's good news.
You know what? I can honestly say, I was talking to Mrs. S.O.R. tonight about it. We're actually going to be unpacking the suitcases.
Nice.
Yes. Do you know what? For a lot of people, you won't understand what we're saying, but we have had suitcases packed ever since we were allowed back in our home after being evacuated from the forest fires here. And we're actually going to be unpacking them. That is a huge, huge step. Huge step. And feeling safe again. So, I never thought I would go through something like that. This is why I'm so concerned about what's happening down in Florida, Georgia, and Texas, because it is scary, man. It is so scary on what is going on. So, anyways, let's move on here to some monsters. I got to tell you guys this story. I know you guys and many people have seen the photo that I posted on Space Out Radio's Facebook page in regards to the ghost that was caught on Saturday night at the local museum. And before I get into that photo, because we are talking about monsters, this thing looks like a monster. If you haven't seen it, go to our Spaced Out Radio group on Facebook and join the group, and you can check out the photo there. I would love to hear your comments. But I have to tell you, we did the tour, and it was a fundraiser, as I mentioned last week. We did the tour to try and raise money for our local fire department, our volunteer fire department, you know, as a way of saying thank you for everything they did to keep us safe during the forest fires. So on Saturday night, we did the tour, and we had 46 people show up. Now, our goal was to raise $1,000 for the fire department. I got to go. Tonight was their fire department practice, because Tuesday nights is when they do their practice. And before their practice started, I got to stand in front of them and hand them $1,060 in fundraised money to go towards them getting some much-needed equipment to help battle forest fires next year, or hot spots if they flare up next year. So I just want to give a real round of applause to my town of 100 Mile House and the 108 Mile Ranch area for stepping up and, you know, beating our goal of $1,000. So it was a very, very cool night. We had 2 fire trucks there, 7 members from the fire hall. Some of them even took the tour, and many of them had some really cool experiences. But getting to the photo of the night, one thing we do on the tour is we encourage our tourists, if we can call them that, to take a lot of photos. So this lady named Connie Bucher, who is a retired school teacher in the area, never really believed in the paranormal, wasn't a fan of it, never watched the television shows, thought it was all bunk. She comes with her friend, because her friend really wanted to go and didn't want to go alone. So their part of the tour started off in the old Clydesdale barn, and we have a spirit in there that we call the Shadow Man, who loves to be photographed. Corey Greaves, who is part of my team, and many of you will recognize her in the Spreaker chat room in the S.O.R Space Travelers Club, she ran the barn that night. And the barn is 2 stories. So after she finished the investigation on the bottom floor, she took everybody up to the top floor. And while everybody's standing around on the top floor, she encouraged people to take photos. So Connie starts taking some photos. And randomly, she picks this photo, or place to take a picture as she's scanning all around, just blasting off photos of this stairwell going to this walkway that kind of goes over to the end of the barn. And lo and behold, there is a man standing on the stairwell. To me, his face looks like it's burned, yet he seems to be smiling at the camera. And his arm is bent at the elbow with his hand on the railing like he is walking up the stairs. Now, I've asked numerous people who were in that area, because that group came to my section of the tour after they were done there. So I saw the picture about 15 minutes after it happened. And they were blown away. And I'm like, was there anybody on that stairway? And they all said no. I even asked Corey later on. I said, was there anybody on that stairway? And they said no, not a soul. The tour hadn't gone up into that stairwell area yet. Now, Everett, you have seen the photo. What do you think it is? And I just want to quick shout out to Mr. Skeptic at hashtag Space Out Radio on Twitter. He has posted the photo, so thank you so much for doing that. I really do appreciate that.
I looked at the picture. I've looked at the picture many times. and I've read the comments, and as the skeptic, sometimes I go back and forth. And the one thing that intrigues me is that when you look at it, it looks like your stereotypical image of what you would expect a ghost to look like. Or, you know, it looks like sort of a figure in white, maybe wearing a coat, kind of having a skull-like face, smiling, going up the stairs. And the more I look at it, to me, there's something there. And I think that this is a case, and Eric can probably speak better on this, where the provenance of the event is going to be as important as the photo itself. It needs to be documented and written down and basically kept with the photo from today forward, that this is what happened, that there was nobody there. And I think that as more photos are taken, what those results, you know, what if images are gotten that are similar to this, I think that could possibly go a long way towards proving that that barn has activity. The one thing that does concern me a little bit with the picture is when you look at the face of the image, if you look down and to the right a little bit, there is a bracket or something on one of the rafters that kind of has the same reflective quality and sort of a similar shape. And when I look at that, I wonder, and I'm not a photo analyst, or I can barely use the camera on my phone, but if you were to take that bracket and kind of move it up, they seem to have a similar shape. But just looking at it, to me, it is absolutely intriguing, and I think it begs that there definitely needs to be more investigation there in that barn.
Well, the funny part about it is, with the barn, we know of the one spirit in there. We call him Shadow Man. And there's also the cowboy in there. Okay? The cowboy, people have seen him, including a couple of our investigators, Carrie being one of them, who has seen him standing against a wall, and he's wearing, his silhouette has a cowboy hat on, and that's why we call him the cowboy. And we know the spirits in there like to be photographed. We don't know who this one is. So it's a mystery to us. And on the comments that I've read about it after it being posted, I've heard everything from a cutout to it's a person to it's pareidolia. I'm sorry, you know what? I've seen pareidolia. Trust me, all you have to do is look at a bunch of YouTube stuff, or anybody who's posting the CGI crap, and you'll see a lot of that pareidolia on there. This was an authentic photo. I've been in that barn probably 20 times, 30 times, and I've been up that stairway as well. And there is nothing that can convince me that we didn't capture, well, Connie Bucher didn't capture the perfect photo of a ghost. I mean, to me, I'm still blown away by it. And when I was at the fire hall today presenting them with their money, that was all the talk around the fire hall. Let's see the picture. Do you have a picture? And even the captain, Marcel, he's like, "Can you text that to me?" You know, and he was as skeptic as any of them coming in. And he and his daughters did the tour. He was as skeptical as anything, and he now wants to come back because that photo just absolutely freaked him out and intrigued him.
Well, I'm going to say that
I
have a hard
right
time
now, and it's.
One second.
Go ahead, Everett. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead, Eric.
Well, I'm looking at the photo right now, and you can see the beams in the roof, the trusses, whatever that is. And somebody brought up a good point that it almost looks like there's some behind the initial, the main image. I mean, there's something cutting off the trusses. Something is in front of the trusses. There's 1, 2, 3. There's 4 trusses in the picture, and the ghost picture, and I'm just going to go ahead and call it a ghost picture because, I'm convinced that this is really something pretty cool, is superimposed over where the truss would be. And if, people that want to look at this picture, if you look over, there should be truss running past that point, roof truss. And there's this face, shoulder, arm, and then there's something beside the main picture. I think whoever took this picture got a wonderful ghost picture. I really feel like this is the real deal.
You know what we're going to do here, guys? And I'm just going to be spontaneous here. And I know Corey is listening right now. I'm going to call Corey up. I want to get her opinion of this because she was the one who had the tour going in the barn. She was the one running it. So I want to get Corey in here right now just to hear what she has to say. I know we're doing this spontaneously. She's probably going to be like, "Oh, I'm sleeping. What's going on?" or she's in her hot tub listening.
No, she's awake. She's awake.
All right. Well, darn it, Corey, answer your phone. All right. Hi, Corey. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. Were you sleeping, or are you in the hot tub?
No, I was eating nachos.
All right. Now, obviously, I know you're listening in, and you wanted to. I just decided, you know what? Heck with it. Rather than me explaining everything, you were in the barn when that photo was taken. Could you explain to us what happened there? Because there is a lot of debate going on social media about whether we faked that picture or not.
Oh yeah, no, the picture is totally real. She showed me a couple minutes after she took it. Everybody's flipping out. There's tons of activity in there. I'm a little worried about going back, actually. When we were downstairs, tons of men's cologne. I don't know if whoever was downstairs was different than who was upstairs, but there was lots of activity that night. And actually, I had typed out that I actually texted the picture to Elizabeth to ask her what she thought, because I was a little worried that if this is not a friendly ghost, because it doesn't look too friendly, about being in there again. And she's so I asked her that question, and then I texted the picture. And she said before she even saw the picture, she thought that he had hung himself and has been in there ever since. And I said that was kind of interesting because at some point during the tour, and I don't remember who it was, there's so many people, I think it was before we even went in, we were standing outside, and a gentleman had said to me, "Has anybody ever hung themselves in there?" I said, "Oh, I don't know." I said, I can ask, but then totally forgot as the evening went on. But yeah, no, it's a real picture. Yeah. And who was talking, they were saying, and as I was looking at the picture yesterday, down to the right of him, down below one of the beams, there's I looked through my pictures and I'd deleted things that there was nothing of, but there is there's like a white area and then black underneath it. I'd like to get a picture in there. Not that I'll ever go in there again. Dave, maybe you can take a picture of that same area and see what is underneath that, to the right at the bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got to figure it out. We are going to have to investigate. I haven't been back in the barn since that night, but it is very, very intriguing, as to what's going on. As I said, I knew about the Shadow Man and then the cowboy, who a couple people picked up as well. I believe you picked him up.
Yeah, that was about 2 years ago when we went. That picture was taken. That's why I was telling the people, take 2 or 3 really quick pictures so that you can see there's something there or there's nothing there. If you just take one picture, you don't really have anything to compare it to, right? So when we went in there that night, it was Jim Colonisk, is that how you say his name?
Colonisk,
yeah. Telling people to take quick pictures, and that was like one of the very first pictures. They were just walking in that was taken. I'd love to see that picture again. I don't know where it is.
I know Carrie, our other investigator, has seen the Shadow Man in there right now. and I'm trying to get her to listen in right now because we're chatting on Facebook as half like, hey, we're talking about the tour. But take us upstairs. Now, you had a group of about 16 people, and obviously you are leading the way, and you're kind of explaining what is going on upstairs. So take us through that situation, where the people were, because there's a lot of debate whether or not, you know, there were people just meandering around and somebody started heading upstairs, or if the group was together. And I think that's very important for people who are viewing the picture to understand.
Well, then they might be disappointed in my answer, because I said, let's all go upstairs. I turned the light on and let everybody walk upstairs. I don't actually know that there wasn't anybody standing on the stairs. I can't say that, you know. She showed me the picture about 2 minutes after she'd taken it. Now, that picture is going up the stairs. When she when she showed me, we already had gone across the boardwalk, and we were down on the backside. And people were looking through their pictures. And she was like, oh my God, and they were looking at a picture, and she showed me, and I said, well, that's not where we are, because this is backwards. We were at the backside, right? So that was at the front side when she had just come up. So I cannot verify that there isn't anybody up there, but there was nobody up there on our tour that looked like that. I'll tell you that.
Well, it's very interesting indeed, because I think it was one heck of a photo that you guys got, and you're going to be stationed in the barn next time.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. But it's another thing on that picture, when I looked at it, and I'm not looking at it tonight, that's for sure. But see, it looks like he has like a line down his head, like a squiggly. It
looked like hair
or something. Do you think that's hair? I don't know. I can just see like a squiggly line going down the center of his head. I wish it was clearer, but who knows?
How certain are you that is a ghost rather than someone on the tour?
Oh God, yes, 100%. There's no doubt about it. And I'm quite skeptical. You know me, right? And I actually kind of debunked a couple other pictures people were taking because they were taking them through the logs. And one of them, actually, I really would like to see again. But the one of them, I was like, no, I think that's some dust. And so I cleared it. She took another picture. And so, yeah, I'm very skeptical. I think you know that. So, yeah, no, that's definitely a real picture.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Corey. Appreciate you breaking it down for us.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Awesome. I'm glad to get that insight, because I really hadn't had a chance to talk to Corey about that just yet. So they actually went reverse on that, and that's where the photo was taken, which is really cool.
Yeah, that is. I can't see how somebody can actually say that is a person, unless they brought a semi-transparent, opaque costume with them. I just can't picture that as in any way, shape, or form being a person going up the stairs.
I really don't know. Preacher, what's your take on everything? Being our resident scientist.
I'm looking at it. I'm actually, folks, I'm looking at the picture right now, and I think it's legit. If there was nobody on the stairs, this is not a case of pareidolia. This is a case of a picture or a camera capturing a spirit. I'm looking at this thing, and the way it's occluding what is behind it. You know, it's cutting off the picture of the raptor, and if you look at the other raptors, you know, they're going past where this thing is. I'm on board with saying that this is a legitimate capture of a spirit on film, or, you know, electronic media as it is. I don't think this is faked. I don't think it's photoshopped. It looks like one of those once-in-a-lifetime spirit pictures. I would love to have been set up to see if there was any atmospheric disturbance. You know, did the barometric pressure go down in that area? Was there a temperature drop? Any, you know, something, the problem with
ghosts is we can't stick a thermometer up a ghost butt, but we can look at the area around the manifestation and see if there's anything, it's indirect observation. And any scientist that says, well, indirect observation doesn't count is full of crap, because we do it all the time for certain diseases. The disease doesn't show up, so we have to look for indirect signs that the disease happens. Like syphilis, we use heterophile antibodies, just as an example. So indirect observation of the phenomena around the spirit we see manifesting is legitimate as it can be. And I look at this picture, and it just rings, this is as unscientific as it can get, but the picture rings true with me.
And once again, I don't know if there is any other photos, because I do know Connie, who grabbed the photo, was just taking random photos. I haven't seen the befores or afters yet. I mean, that's something that we're going to have to prove. The other thing that we're going to have to do is go back in there and actually do some testing in regards to trying to recreate the photo, just to see if anything happened. And obviously, because the photo was taken with a cell phone, we're going to have to try with the cell phone and not a regular camera, just to try and recreate everything to as exact as it was. But I can verify with Corey, there was absolutely nobody on the tour that looked like that. And it is an amazing catch. And, if she doesn't want to go in there, I'll go in there as well. I'll go in there as well. I have no problem with that. The barn doesn't scare me. Now, the post house...
Well, you are brave.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Kevin Leggett in the Spreaker chat room is saying, either way, the pick feels evil. I'm sorry, Kevin, I don't pick evil. I pick more of I just feel like it's like, what the hell? What are they doing? More of a curiosity than anything else. I think this whatever this manifestation was is looking at us like we're looking at it, like this photograph is looking at it. Like, what's going on here? I don't pick up any evil. I really don't.
I like Jake's comment on hashtag Spaced Out Radio. He goes, yeah, well, I'll take your word for that there was no one who looked like an orc from Lord of the Rings on your ghost tour, Dave. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a point.
I do appreciate that. So, it is an eerie photo. I do have to go back in there. Like I said, I haven't been in there since the tour. I know curiosity will probably get me this weekend, and I'll probably have to go spend some time in the barn this weekend and see what's going on. But I'll tell you, you never know what you're going to get at that museum. That's for sure. You never know what you're going to get. But I will try and recreate it, because I'm having a lot of people ask me about recreating the photo and seeing what it's about. So we're definitely going to, get into that as well. Now, we did want to talk about monsters this week, and this hour, and Everett, I'll start with you on this one if you don't mind. There's a lot of people, whether it's a Flatwoods Monster or whether it's the ghost, that photo that we captured this past weekend. A lot of people claim to see monsters, albeit Bigfoot, Dogman, sea monsters, little trolls and gremlins running around. I'm not saying the other G word. How much of that can we take seriously? How much do you think is really out there that people are visualizing?
I think that a majority of the reports of monsters, quote-unquote monsters, are probably people's fears, some misidentifications. The problem is that even if there's a small percentage of every type of monster being reported that is completely unexplained or, is not I don't know exactly how to put it. If it is coming from a reliable source, and if it's just a small percentage, that kind of goes along with verifying the idea that monsters of any type, and it's kind of hard to call them monsters, really, because we haven't determined what a lot of them really are. But I think it goes a long way to verify that there is something out there that does exist beyond what we know.
Preacher, what do you think about that? What do you think about the monsters people are seeing? Do you think it's real, all of these sightings, or do you think it's just a lot of imagination?
I think it's real, but the thing is, we call things monsters. The classical definition of monster is that which is without soul or it's created. I think what we're finding is people are getting out there and looking for stuff, and they're seeing, I don't know, I feel like they're seeing things that have been there all along. They're not necessarily monsters, but they just don't fit within our everyday, our worldview. So we call them monsters, whether it be Bigfoot, whether it be Dogman. I just don't think, to me, a monster would be Godzilla or Yonggary, something like that. These things are just, people or animals or some kind of creature that exists that we don't have a label on yet. I don't think they're monsters per se.
In a way, though, can't we create our own monsters? I mean, there is a case in Wisconsin, the Slender Man case, where these girls became familiar with the Slender Man from Creepypasta and the video game, I believe, and they turned it into, in their own minds, a living, actual person. So did they, in a way, create their own monster that may not exist to 90% of the world or 99% of the world, but in their head or in their life, they've manifested and created this thing? And is that as valid? Is that as valid a monster as, say, Dogman or Bigfoot or any other unknown creature out there wandering in the woods?
Okay, I think we have to look at this in the fact of, take the Eastern tradition of the tulpa. I think if enough people believe in a phenomena, it becomes, at least, let me coin a phrase, para-real. I think that in the case of Bigfoot or Dogman, I think that these are legitimate biological creatures. But when you take the rake, Slender Man, I believe that what has happened is enough people have, let's just say, signed the petition enough that now our thoughts have created a form. We now have Slender Man as a thought form or a tulpa that enough people looks like, have believed in something to give it, physical form. I think we as humans don't realize that, if you look back, just say biblical, to think is to sin. I think the reason for that is because our thoughts, if enough of us think about something or direct our attention to something, it becomes real. I think we have the ability to create thought forms as a mass consciousness. So yeah, I think maybe Slender Man is real because enough people have believed in him to create him. Like the Phylth experiments that they did, where a bunch of people, they made up an entity called Phylth. They gave him a name, they gave him a history, they gave him certain attributes, and before long, this entity began to manifest. And I think what you have, especially, and I think it happens even more now that we have the internet. You know, how many thousands of people can sign up and start believing in a creature or a entity than, say, 40 years ago, 30 years ago? I mean, when I was in college back in the 90s, early 90s, 91 is my freshman year, in order to get on the internet, it was, it took 15 minutes of commands and goofing around just to get to the internet. Not what you have now where you hit one keystroke and you're there. It didn't exist back then. Now you have all these people that can converge on an idea. And I'm so interested in knowing if all these people believing in one thing can make it true.
At what point, though, does imagination become reality, though? And I think that's the question, is it not?
I think there's probably a critical mass, but I mean, we're talking magnitudes of thousands of people now. 30 years ago, it had to spread by word of mouth. Now, one person could get on their Facebook page and talk to 200 people. And those 200 people can talk to another. It becomes this really chaotic. We don't have a set number for it, but things like this can spread overnight. The old saying was, a lie can reach around the world before the truth has its shoes on.
True that. But
I think now we have so many people out there linked up. Just look at all of the people in the Space Out Radio Spreaker chat. Pretty much all of us are connected on Facebook. We're just a small segment of what's out there. There's thousands of people that you could get to believe in one thing if you're charismatic enough. So I'm not sure what the critical mass for belief would be.
Dave, do you mind if I ask a question about the Phylth experiment?
Sure, go right ahead.
Eric, I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but I know that the general idea was that 3 or 4 people, like you said, basically created this entity. They gave it a name and all of that. But they reported that it was interacting with them and communicating with them. But did it ever communicate or interact with anybody not involved in the experiment?
That's a very good question. Let's see, that's one of the criticisms is that there were no solid controls. There really wasn't a controlled scientific background to it. And I don't think everybody agreed on it. Okay, the character was created and agreed upon to be named Philip Aylesford, and he was referred to as Philip during the test. His fictional history was coincided with actual events, but I don't think the phenomenon spread without, beyond the people that were doing the experiment. So in that way, it wasn't a controlled legitimate scientific experiment. It should have been anybody could have come in. I mean, there was there's a psychologist who was Dr. Joel Witten. There was a chairperson of Mensa, Margaret Sparrows. There's just this wide version, this wide net of people. But when you look at what actually happened, it only happened to them, and it only happened when they were experimenting, so to speak. Nobody else has come along and reproduced, and that's a key part of science, reproducing. Did anybody else start to do an experiment with this fictional person named Philip? So, in a way, I think what this study did is show that our minds are capable more than we give it credit for, but nobody really came along afterwards and tried to duplicate it.
Let me ask you guys about something else here, because a lot of what people may be seeing is just some form of pareidolia. And I'm wondering if people's imaginations are more of pareidolia than they are of any type of real creature. Now, I could say that the same about myself with my own experiences, from the little wood nymph that I saw on the trail with my son to the extraterrestrials that have been at my window. I could say that was all pareidolia one way or another, but how much ever do you think that this is made up in one's mind due to pareidolia rather than an actual experience?
Well, I think pareidolia is a double-edged sword. We don't want to dismiss it, but we don't want to use it to explain everything away. And using your photo for an example, I've seen a lot of people say pareidolia. The problem with that is that generally pareidolia is if you look at a picture, you can start to pick out things. And I've seen pictures where somebody will say, there's an alien head. And then if you look at the picture, you can find 8 or 10 or 12 of them. With your photo as an example, for that to be pareidolia, somebody would have had to have created a mist or been smoking and blown smoke and basically had it form that shape. And what are the odds of that? So the long answer and the short answer to your question is pareidolia is a double-edged sword. We have to be aware of it. We have to apply it and look at things with it in mind, but we don't have to slap it on every single photo as just a way to explain it away.
Preacher, what's your thoughts on pareidolia?
I have to agree with Everett completely on this one. Pareidolia, if we put up an abstract image and 20 out of 25 people see something specific in that, we might be able to call that pareidolia. But in the case of that picture, I think there's nothing in the background. Okay, I'll qualify this by saying I have never been to that place. But just from what I'm looking at the picture, I don't see something that we could all look at the same time and say, and have our brains make something up. To me, that is a solid image of something, whether it's a ghost, whatever it is. Like Everett's saying, there has to be something in place for pareidolia to take effect. And I'm not sure, but I just don't think it would be open to interpretation if it was pareidolia. I think, they try and say the face on Mars is pareidolia.
Okay.
And
And I understand with what you're saying, Preacher, and I appreciate that, and Everett, your thoughts as well. But let's go to the people in this field, because we only got about 7 minutes left in tonight's show. The comments, a lot of the comments that they were made, and I'm not trying to sound thin-skinned here, okay, but a lot of the comments that I read on that, and I've read every comment as I normally do, because I like to keep in touch with what people are saying on the posts that I make. A lot of the comments, I could tell right away that they've either never heard or listened to our show because they don't understand that I pride myself on credibility with this show, and I'm not about to post something that isn't very credible, at least on purpose. And it's amazing to me some of the responses that we got that basically, this is nothing, this is just the barn, this is pareidolia, this is a cutout, this is a person, this is everything, you know, and that is something, like some of the comments were, you can't get anything off of one picture, I need more evidence, you know. Being critical, I guess what I'm saying is, being critical is one thing, but at what point does a person's reputation and a person's attitude intermix into creating tension in a site like this? Because this was my thought, because I have a personal opinion of this, because I was there. Okay, not during the photo, but I was on site. My personal opinion was, you don't trust me? Why don't you trust me? Why am I going to post something if it's BS? I'm not looking for the attention. A lot of people may say, well, you have a radio show, so obviously you are. But not when it comes to that. I'm not about getting attention through forgery. You know what I'm saying? So at what point are we too critical rather than looking at the source who is posting it? Ev?
You know, that's a tough question to answer, because in a way, I think we've been conditioned to be too critical or overly critical because we're faced with and presented with so many questionable or overly obvious fakes. So I think many people, the first answer or their first, response is, that's fake. But you have to look at the source, and I know you, and I know that there will be follow-up on this. And let's be honest, if somebody goes in there and you take 25 photos and 20 of them seem to show some sort of mist in there or some sort of object or reflection, you will be the first one to say that this may not be paranormal. But that's probably, knowing what I know about you and knowing what I know about the ghost hunts, that's probably not going to happen. I think what you need to do is go out there and get a few more pictures and show, some random photos and just show that this was a one-time weird event and move forward from there. Maybe do an investigation, bring in some other equipment, and let people see what goes on.
Now, the good part is we've had 3 or 4 people who were on the tour at that point actually log in and say and confirm what we stated, that there was nobody on that stairwell when that photo was taken. So we do have that, but Amy at #SpacedOutRadio on Twitter brings up a good point, Preacher, where she says, you, as in me, Dave, have that point of reference about the environment. We don't. I don't even trust myself with subjective experience. Is that being, and I agree with her point, but is that being too skeptical and not accepting the experience, or is that being absolutely right on the construct that you want to nail the perfect piece of evidence and not just say, well, there's pareidolia, or that's a barn door, or something along those lines?
I think in this case, okay, like Everett, I know you too. You're not going to put something out there I'm going to give something you put out to make it simple. I'm going to put a picture you put out there. I'm going to give that the benefit of the doubt because I know you. Those people that don't are going to have to wonder or ask the question, well, what are the circumstances? What were the parameters? I think in a case like this picture, we know now that there is some kind of activity in that barn. Now, let's put our scientific, let's use a scientific method. Let's investigate that barn and try and come up with some kind of verifiable, some facts behind that picture. I have no doubt in my mind that picture is a legitimate picture of a ghost.
Okay, so let me.
But I don't expect anybody else to take my word for that.
No, but let me play devil's advocate here. Okay, let me play devil's advocate. Even though, yes, I decided to put that picture on public to see what people would say, I guess what I'm trying to say here is I didn't need to do that. And how much evidence is out there that we are not seeing that could be very, very good evidence, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's aliens, whether it's fairies, or even ghosts themselves, that aren't being verified out there or being put public because people are afraid of the reaction. People are afraid that they're not going to be believed. People are afraid that they are not going to be taken seriously or heavily criticized from people who were not there.
That's just it. People who were not there.
Well, hold on.
Everett.
Maybe this is a case where, and we've talked about this behind the scenes and on the radio as well, where you take the picture and you present it to, let's get a variety of opinions from people in different fields, whether it be skeptics, photo analysts, psychologists. Let's get a variety of different opinions. Let's take the personal experience, bring that into it, because I think in the case of this photo, everybody that was there, their experience is important to the veracity of the photo, and present it all. Let's look at the positives, the negatives, and put it out there, and let's try and do something and get a definitive opinion. Oh, that's contradictory. A definitive opinion on the photo.
You guys want to continue talking about this?
I think one of the things you have to do is when you do from this point forward, when you do ghost walks through that barn, you need to point to that spot, say, on this date at this time, we got this image. Would everybody please take a picture? And when you go through your ghost walk, try to synchronize everybody who's taking a picture at the same time. Get them all to shoot in the same time at the same place. Because that's one of the things about science.
Preacher, that's easy enough to say, okay, but it was not a paranormal investigation. And that's what I've been trying to explain to people online. It wasn't a paranormal investigation. If it was a paranormal investigation, I agree with that. We're talking about someone who was a skeptic, who was just taking random photos of a stairwell where there was nobody there. And that person, whoever it may be on the stairwell, is A, going in the opposite direction of the tour, and B, looks nothing like anybody there. That is the big issue that we are having.
See, to me,
I think what you need to do is you have to go through this area and maybe take a little bit of control and say, okay, everybody shoot in this direction. I mean, we're talking digital cameras.
Yes,
it's not like the old days where you had to pay to get film developed. Just get everybody to take a picture and then see what happens.
But we aren't there for the investigation. That's the thing. We're there at the tour for the experience. And I'm going to get you guys to hold on. We're going OT tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Revolution Radio, it's good to be with you tonight. Thank you so much for having us. If you want to continue on listening, go to spacedoutradio.com, click on Listen Live. We will be right back with hour number 4 of Spaced Out Radio. We're on overtime. Get your earplugs ready. Talk to you in about 7 minutes.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is S.O.R's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S.O.R as we take over the Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from Euphoria. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an S.O.R Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The S.O.R Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com, starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and S.O.R.
Sound of the horn means we're going to overtime tonight on Spaced Out Radio, something we rarely do, but nonetheless, we're going to have some fun. We're into a good debate here on the photo. If you haven't seen it, it is on our Spaced Out Radio group page. It is on Twitter, as well as it's been posted in the Spreaker chat room as well. This is a photo of what looks to be a man walking up the stairs during the paranormal investigation. So I want to thank all of you for continuing to listen on in as we are in overtime here. I am joined by our resident scientist, Eric Markham, as well as from the Encounter Online, Everett Thiemer. Gentlemen, thank you so much for wanting to stick around and have a little bit more fun and debate.
Always
great
up for
to be here.
overtime, Dave.
Absolutely.
This is a fun picture to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to get to some comments on Twitter here. Okay. So, Mr. Skeptic, who is always known for his very good snark, says, "We know this is a ghost, now let's get scientific." And I'm just going to... I just love quoting him. I guess that's the reason why I do it, sometimes. But, nonetheless, this wasn't... I want to explain the situation again for those who are tuning in late. We got this incredible photo of what we believe is a ghost. I think it is because I know the area, I know the people who were involved, and I also know there was nobody on the stairwell. Now, there are a lot of questions that come around to that, and I really believe that everything should be open up to debate. However, at what point do we take some legitimacy to what it could very well be? That is the big question that we are trying to get through tonight. Is it legit? Is it a person? Is it pareidolia? What could it be? And I want to get to a couple of quotes at hashtag Spaced Out Radio from Mike. Mike says, "You want us to think it's a ghost. I don't think it's fake. I just think it could be something other than a ghost. We have numerous witnesses who have come out and stated that there was nobody on the stairwell when that picture was taken. We know there's nothing fake in there because we don't have any cutouts, we don't have any artwork. And when I saw the photo, which was 15 minutes after, and knowing the person who took the photo, who was very skeptical about the paranormal in the first place, that's what leads me to believe we got something real." Now, Mike follows up on hashtag Spaced Out Radio and says, "You want real science in the paranormal, but you don't want skepticism. Skepticism is at the heart of the science." Yes, it is. However, it's very simple to be skeptical if you are not putting the facts together. We have witnesses, multiple witnesses. Yes, we only have the one picture, okay? But we have witnesses who have stated numerous times there was nobody on the stairwell. You have to take everything into account. That's the point that I am saying here. You have to take everything into account. We also have had some very professional, if we could call them that, ghost hunters who have been critical of it too. I'm okay with criticism. I'm okay with skepticism. That's not the point. The point that I am trying to get at here is, at what point do you turn that skepticism into believability? That is the issue that I have, because there are too many people out there who are refusing to maybe give us that next Patterson Gimlin film, to give us a video of a fairy, to give us actual photographic evidence of aliens or ghosts, because there are too many people out there who claim to be skeptic or professional researchers who yet do not want to admit or take into the original accounts of what people are saying who were there in any of their decision. And that is dangerous. That is the purpose of why we are debating this. Everett, what do you think?
Well, I think I am the skeptic. And I look at that, and knowing the stories, I can't dismiss it. There is something there. There is something interesting there. And to me, it warrants further investigation. And that right there, the fact that this wasn't an investigation, this wasn't people out there specifically trying to capture evidence, looking for something that they can put on their website or promote. It was just a tour going through there with people taking pictures, and somebody caught something. To me, as a skeptic, that gives it some validity. And I think that Stanton Friedman had mentioned it earlier, that there are some skeptics out there that are really, they make a career out of predetermining their results. They're going to look at that and say, well, it's this. I can't prove it's this, but it's definitely not that. So in terms of being skeptical of it, looking at it as a skeptic, I think it completely warrants more investigation or more research or something. It cannot be just dismissed and eliminated. It has to be followed up on.
I agree with you, and that's something that we are going to have to do in the near future. We're going to have to try and get there at the same time of light and same time of atmosphere, maybe temperature, okay, if we want to do that. I'm not saying that we aren't going to, because I'll tell you right now, curiosity is definitely going to get the better of me with this one, and I already know it has with Carrie and Corey. So we are definitely going to go back in there. We're going to take other photos, and we're going to make sure that we do our verifiably best to try and recreate what happened. That's the thing to do.
Now, when you recreate this or try and get more proof or validation to it, are you going to do a quote-unquote investigation, or is it just going to be like this one happened, just hopefully somebody catches something?
No, it would be under an investigative technique.
Excellent. And then that's a case where maybe, like Eric has mentioned many times, taking readings of some different temperature, weather phenomena, some simple baseline things like that you can use to compare.
Very much so. Preacher, what do you think?
I think what we've got here is an initial result that requires further study. And in under the auspices of further study, I think we need to set up in the barn area some ways of trapping data that would back up what were our observation. Let's set up a barometer. Let's set up a something to read the temperature. Let's get a baseline of what's going on in that barn, and then when something like this manifestation takes place, we can compare what happened when the manifestation took place to what we usually get. And it may prove to be all this preparation may prove that we don't catch anything, but we can't completely dismiss the observation of our minds. I mean, one of the problems with being a trained scientist is we don't want to take our senses for granted. We don't want to say, I saw it, therefore it is. That's why we have controls in place.
Okay.
But I think we need to listen to our senses.
All right. Skeptic says on hashtag Spaced Out Radio Twitter, it's another unidentifiable fuzzy blob in a photo. It's irrelevant whether you believe it was shot by a skeptic or a believer. Okay, you're looking at a zoomed-in copy. The original copy of the photo is not blurry. It's not a fuzzy blob or whatever it is. So I highly suggest you check out the actual real photo of that, which I can post at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. If you wish, let me know. All right? So, anyways, this leads to a very important conversation. I mentioned it twice, and I'm curious to get your opinion. As I've stated before, a lot of people do not bring their evidence out to public because they know what they saw, they know what they went through, they know everything, and yet there are people out there who will refute it even though the storyline is the same, like in this case with numerous people. Okay? This is what, in my opinion, is a danger to the paranormal or the supernatural community. Because we don't want to believe. And I will give you an example with that. If there is anything, and the reason why I put that picture out was for two reasons. Number one, I was very excited to see what the reaction would be. All right, and I knew it was coming, and I wasn't disappointed. But number two, I have on my phone a video of a fairy that my daughter caught. It's a 6-second video. The fairy is in it for about 2.5, maybe 3 seconds. And I wanted to test this photo out because the video, I know I will be absolutely hammered on by skeptics. Absolutely hammered. I have let a few people see it. Not many. but I know what's in there. And I can tell you this. It's an original video. I've never touched it. I have never doctored with it. The main reason being, I don't know how. I'm not technically advanced that way. And it gave me, or pardon me, it strengthened my resolve by reading a lot of the comments and people questioning my own credibility on why I will never release it. How many more people out there, Everett, do you think they are that have that smoking gun photo or video that aren't releasing it because they don't want the accusations, because especially from people who are being armchair skeptics in front of their computer?
I think there is a ton of evidence out there, potential evidence out there, that is locked away on people's hard drives and in their cameras and on their phones because they don't want to face the ridicule or the questioning. But I think that you're in a position here with this photo to begin to change that. You've put it out there. Let's stand behind it. Let's continue the discussion on this photo. Let's have your tours and groups investigate and see what happens next. And the more you can follow up with this photo and basically meet and address the arguments of other people, and not do it by calling them names or let's not get into an ego fight, but by presenting more coherent discussion, argument, and evidence, I think it could begin to change that tide, at least on spacedoutradio.com, where maybe we can create a safe haven for people to begin to present their evidence.
Preacher? This is where you speak, Preacher. We're in overtime.
I know. I had to hit my mute button. I agree with Everett 100% on this. So much of what we see in the paranormal is so-and-so took a picture at such a point or such a video at such a point, and we're expected to believe or not to believe. I think the problem is there's a lot of good people out there. I'm thinking of a person of mine that I know at work. I know this person personally. I can't call out their name because her husband would just go off. But she has a home security system. If anything happens at her home, it comes to her cell phone. One day, she got an alarm, and there was something moving through her house. I have seen the pictures. Now, some of you know me, at least through, if not personally, you know me through Space Out Radio, and I hope you know I'm a no BS type of person. And there are shadows of translucent beings in her house when this happened. Now, she is all for coming forward and saying, look what happened in my house. Her husband is all, no, we aren't going to talk about this. It didn't happen. There are so many cases like that out there where if we could just get cooperation from the person. I mean, I have seen the photographic evidence. I know this person. The job she is in kind of precludes, I can't give away too much, but she's in a position where her credibility is without question. It's just the job she has, and what you have to do to get that job precludes being a BSer, okay? So I've seen these pictures, and I believe with no doubt that what she has is evidence of paranormal activity in her house. How many more people are like that are out there? They can't come forward because either they don't want to lose their jobs, their husbands, their wives. Some other factor is acting on them from an outside influence saying, we can't do this. There's proof out there. And it's just a matter of finding a central story, maybe a central location to have all that stuff sent. Maybe Eric Cooper's touching on that with his paranormal. He wants to start sort of an international clearinghouse for paranormal investigation. And I think all of us can talk to somebody that we know that we would trust. If this person said, it's raining diamonds, we'd probably believe them. 99.9%. We think we know this person well enough that they said something ridiculous, we'd give them the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot of that out there.
Guys, we're going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes here. And I want to say thanks for sticking up and around for overtime. It's a lot of fun. It's a good debate. And I guess in my opinion, because I like to see everything bright and shiny, and I like shiny things and everything like that, I would like to, and I realize that we need to be skeptical about these topics. I really do believe we need to be skeptical about these topics. But,
there's nothing wrong with skepticism.
No, there is nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But at some point, we have to say, when there is evidence, especially from people who have come out and said, I was there at that point, there was nobody on the stairway, and we've had, like I said, 3 or 4 people confirm that. At some point, you have to say, or stop saying, give me proof. We already got the proof. We already got the proof.
Yeah, that's the proof. Right.
Right? We got the proof. Whether you choose to believe it or not, that is the hard part right there. And that
I think that's one of the problems with what we do. I think one of the problems is we try to put it out there, but you can't ram it down somebody's throat. And that we know it's true, the person that gave us the evidence knows it's true, and that puts us in a position to try to convince others that it's true, and that's where we fail.
Absolutely. Eric Markham, Everett Themer, thank you so much for filling in and doing some overtime in hour number 3. Really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
This is a fun picture to talk about.
Absolutely. And we will update everybody once I get my team together and we go back. Maybe we could do it this weekend. Corey, I know you're listening. We may have to plan a Saturday night here. This is important. I want to say thank you to Stanton Friedman for coming on in hours number 1 and 2, talking everything UFO and Flatwoods Monster. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Shane Sirois coming on. We're going to talk about his paranormal investigations. We're also going to talk about some ET contact he's been having recently. We're going to run the gamut on everything under the paranormal umbrella, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking us in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot brings us in and takes us home every single night right here on the mighty S.O.R. Want to say thank you to my team, Everett Themer and Eric Markham from The Encounter Online, Jolene Lammers and Tim Doyle, Web Design, Catherine James, Social Media, Bob Davis, our great announcer, Kim Gandy, our Director of Business Management, and Leslie Mitchell-Clark from LMC Media. Great to have you all along for the ride, but most importantly, we thank all of you in the S.O.R. Space Travelers Club, on Spreaker, Revolution Radio, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio for making this show very, very fun. Without all of you, it's just not fun at all. Good conversation tonight, everyone. Thank you for sharing the show. Thank you for putting the word out there. That's how we grow bigger and better every night. Because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. Take us home. Talk to you in 21 hours from now. Rock it on out.